Welcome to a series of the New Hampshire Office of Planning and Development Flood Module Series. Today we'll be discussing FEMA's flood insurance rate maps. This video will provide information on FEMA's flood insurance rate maps, including what they are, how to find them, how to read them, what they're used for, and how to request to have them changed. Flood insurance rate maps are floodplain maps that are created by FEMA. They show the area of land that is expected to flood during the 1% chance annual flood, formerly known as the 100-year flood. A flood of this magnitude typically happens every 100 years. These floods can happen many years in a row or multiple times in a year. Flood insurance rate maps show the area of land expected to flood, but they do not show the flood depth. Flood insurance rate maps are the legal determination of where the special flood hazard area is in a community. There are several websites to view the flood insurance rate maps. We'll start with FEMA's Map Service Center, which is linked here. When you arrive at the FEMA Map Service Center, you can enter an address into the search bar. It will bring you to a page with a map of the area you searched for. In this example, you can see flood zones shown in blue and yellow and a floodway shown in the striped area. In the top right corner of the screen, we've highlighted Show All Products so you can pull up more detailed information on the individual map panels. This window will show all relevant products for the specified area. This example is for the City of Concord, and you can see effective products and preliminary products. Under the effective products, there are several subfolders showing individual map panels, flood insurance study reports, which is detailed information about the analyses, and base flood elevation tables for floodways and still water elevation tables. Letters of map change, revisions to existing maps, and GIS data for floodplain maps. You can expand any folder to view the desired maps or reports. Here, we've expanded the table for the effective products for the flood insurance rate map panels, which allow us to view the available individual map panels. The last files shown at the bottom, ending in CIND, stands for Community Index, and these show a broader map of the county with the applicable map panels. There are some parts of the state that may not have digital maps. This would require the community official to print out the original maps, and they may look similar to this. Another place to view the flood insurance rate maps is the National Flood Hazard Layer, which is linked here. The National Flood Hazard Layer can be easier to use if you just need to see where the floodplain areas are in your community, or if you need to check the flood zone. The data shown here in the National Flood Hazard Layer is the same data that's shown in the Map Service Center. If you're unsure which map panel to download from the Map Service Center, you can use the National Flood Hazard Layer to navigate to the area and find the panel name. Another place to view the maps is the Flood Map Changes viewer, which is linked here. This is a good source for checking the preliminary maps and how they have changed from the current effective maps. This is from the Flood Map Changes viewer. It can take up a lot of bandwidth and can be slow to load. This is the default view, which is a very busy map with a lot going on. But if you go to the right side panel and click the 3 layers icon with the yellow arrow, and this is your layers list, and you can select which layers you wish to be displayed. National Flood Hazard Layer shows current effective maps. Preliminary Pending National Flood Hazard Layer shows the new maps. And preliminary changes since last firm layer shows what has changed from the previous maps. This is an example of a current effective map. You can see the floodway shown in the striped area and zones AE in the blue area. And on the next slide, here is the preliminary map layer turned on, which has a lot more detail. The purple areas is the special flood hazard areas that are to be removed or reduced. And the yellow is special flood hazard areas that are being added or increased.
So there is a lot of information that is displayed on the flood insurance rate maps, and it can be confusing to understand what you are looking at. So this example that we have here is an example of a typical flood insurance rate map. This is for the city of Concord. All the blue areas indicate the special flood hazard area, which are subject to floodplain regulations. The striped area, which is generally along the main river channel, is what we call the floodway. This is the area of the river expected to see the highest flow of water during a flood and is therefore subject to more stringent development regulations. The orange and brown areas are what was formerly known as the 500-year floodplain is currently called the 0.2% annual chance flood hazard area. And communities are able to adopt higher than the minimum standards, and some communities do regulate this 0.2% annual chance flood hazard area. But communities which have the minimum NFIP regulations, these areas would not be subject to the floodplain regulations. You can also see the flood zone name on the flood insurance rate map. In this particular example, the special flood hazard areas are zone AE, which is indicated on the map. There are also cross sections that go across the river or the special flood hazard area in general. These are the black squiggly lines. Occasionally, a cross section will have a letter indicating the exactly which cross section it is. And those cross sections which have letters, you can actually go into the flood insurance study and look up the exact base flood elevation value for that cross section. If a cross section is unnumbered, then the base flood elevation that is indicated by the number on the map is the most accurate base flood elevation for that cross section. And that base flood elevation, it would be exactly the number indicated for areas along the cross section. Areas in between must be interpolated between the two closest cross sections. So in a small area, you can have multiple different flood zones. This is a picture taken of a few blocks in the city of Rye, New Hampshire. And in this area, there are actually 6 different flood zones. So everywhere in the blue is the 1% annual chance flood hazard area and is subject to minimum NFIP regulations. We have so there is zones AE in this area, as well as the 0.2% annual chance flood hazard area. There's also a VE14 zone, a VE18, VE20, and AO depth 3. Now, if you lived where the red star is located, you would actually, your base flood elevation would be 20 feet, requiring the lowest floor elevation to be 20 feet high. Whereas your neighbor across the street, who lives in the VE14 zone, would actually be required to build 6 feet, or their minimum height would be 6 feet lower than if you lived in the VE20 zone. And so this can result in large differences in height requirements, depending on what zone you are living in. And these zones can change very rapidly over very short areas. And in this particular area, the 0.2% annual chance flood hazard area has some slightly higher elevations, making it outside of the regulated floodplain. And this AO zone is generally for areas which have shallow flooding due to either poor drainage from road cutoffs or dunes. So you may be asking, what are these maps used for? So as we stated in the beginning, the flood insurance rate map designate the special flood hazard area, which is the area subject to local floodplain regulations. If any property owner who owns a property in the special flood hazard area with a federally backed mortgage is required to purchase flood insurance. The flood insurance rate maps also define base flood elevations for every zone, and the minimum height for new development is determined off of the base flood elevation. So this is a necessary information for development occurring in the special flood hazard area. There are ways to change a flood insurance rate map. So in general, these are called letters of map change. There are multiple different types of a letter of map change. The first of which is a letter of map amendment, or LOMA. This is a letter from FEMA stating that an existing structure or parcel of land that is on naturally high ground and has not been elevated by fill would therefore not be inundated by the base flood. These letter of map amendments are typically used for parcel-sized map adjustments. For larger projects, you might consider doing a letter of map revision for projects where multiple parcels are affected. This is where the maps get redrawn to change the flood zone, the boundary, or base flood elevation based on updated hydraulic and hydrologic analysis. There's also a letter of map revision based on fill, which is very similar to the previous letter of map revision, except the existing structure or parcel of land has been elevated by fill. And then this states that due to that fill, the area would not be inundated by the base flood. There are also conditional versions of each of these map changes, and the conditional letter of map change is essentially pre-approval from FEMA that if you develop exactly to the specifications as described, then the parcel or area will be removed from the special flood hazard area. So there's a conditional letter of map amendment, again, used for proposed projects, which are smaller parcel-sized projects. There's the conditional letter of map revision used for larger proposed projects, not using fill. And then there's the conditional letter of map revision based on fill, which is for proposed projects planning to add fill to raise the ground above or raise the grade above flood levels. All of these letter of map changes, or all of these conditional letter of map changes, FEMA will give the determination in advance and would likely qualify for removal from the flood zone once the project is completed exactly to the specifications that were submitted to FEMA initially. So there are a couple ways you can submit the data to change the map. FEMA now offers a online letter of map change submittal, and there is on FEMA's website, you can find the change your flood zone designation page. And to submit the letter of map change, property owners must hire a licensed surveyor or engineer to submit the letter of map change to FEMA, and they also must pay a fee associated with the type of letter of map change that you are requesting. It is important to understand that when you do apply for a letter of map change, FEMA will conduct a review of the building design, whether it is a proposed design or current structure. If FEMA finds a violation in this review, could likely be that there's a basement below base flood elevation with no flood vents. That violation is now officially documented by FEMA and will require prompt correction. And this can be unexpected for a homeowner if you are not aware of all of your local regulations. So you want to ensure that when you do apply for a letter of map change, you check your town's floodplain regulations and make sure that your structure is currently in compliance with the local regulations. Now, the community regulations may vary by community. Some communities allow more stringent requirements. And so you do want to check your community's floodplain ordinance to confirm what the development requirements are for development within the floodplain and ensure that your construction is compliant. We have a web page for the Office of Planning and Development for the Floodplain Management Program with many resources available. And we also have a YouTube page, which is where this training has been posted with recordings of previous floodplain management trainings. We recommend that you check them out if you have any questions. But thank you for watching this video on flood insurance rate maps, and we hope that it was helpful.